Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and Television Office. Our guest tonight is an award-winning filmmaker. He does public service announcements, documentaries, all kinds of television work, and he most recently did a fantastic documentary called Etched in Glass, the Steve Ross story. Roger Lyons, welcome to Double Feature.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm happy you are here as well. Roger, so you work and live primarily in Massachusetts, right?
Correct.
And you made this fantastic documentary, which we'll get into in a second. But how did you start getting into filmmaking?
Well, it actually goes all the way back to my senior year at Syracuse University when I was doing a film. My very first film was a 30-second public service announcements for prison reform.
Okay.
And so I got my little Bolex camera, and for some reason I thought it would be okay to go trudging through the snow in upstate New York to a prison and shoot the prison. And when a guard came screaming, waving his arms out there, saying, "Don't shoot, can't do that here," I realized that it was really exciting to do documentary production. So I kind of wanted to kind of set me off on the desire to do that. But it took 40-something years later before I actually did this film, which is my own documentary, which I started 18 years ago, believe it or not.
Wow. And you have received numerous awards. You received a Governor's Award from the Academy for,
right.
It's an Emmy, basically,
Yeah,
correct?
It's an Emmy statue, but it's a sort of a Lifetime Achievement Award kind of thing.
Yeah. And you do other kind of public service announcements. Your company's called Many Hats,
Many
right?
Hats Productions. We do lots of different things, commercials, PSAs, marketing tapes, specials,
Yep.
and so forth, and this documentary.
And is it very important that, it seems to be important anyway, there seems to be a theme about social relevance. Is that important to you? Is that why you're...
Well, I'll tell you what, the reason I decided to do this film, I was actually working at WBZ as the director of commercial production. So I was really doing commercials mostly,
Yep.
and some marketing tapes and so forth. But they came across with this idea of doing 1-minute profiles of people who've done extraordinary things in their community. And I really didn't have a backlog of people in my Rolodex to call, so I called a friend of mine whose name is Ren Ross, no relation to Steve Ross in the film. And she is very well connected in town. She's an actress and a teacher and so forth. And she said, "Why don't you give Steve Ross a call? He would be great." So I did, and after a 2-hour phone call with Steve, where he told me basically his life story, I met him at the New England Holocaust Memorial in downtown Boston, did a very short interview with him, and thought, my God, there is such a long, deep, compelling story here that someday somebody should do a documentary about this guy.
Yep.
And so I ended up following him around.
Now, just so the audience knows, Steve
Sure.
Ross was a social worker working on the streets.
Right.
His background, he's a Holocaust survivor.
10 concentration camps.
10 concentration camps, and we'll get into that even in our second
Sure.
segment. But he emigrated to the United States of America and decided he would not only get an education, but help kids in trouble. And
Right. That's basically the story of his liberation that kind of spawned his resilience to help other kids, at-risk kids, but not in this situation he was in.
Right.
And so he would go lecturing in inner-city schools and schools where there are lots of disadvantaged kids who faced poverty and crime and abuse and so forth. And when they heard Steve's story about what he went through in 10 concentration camps, they thought, that's nothing compared to what this guy's gone through. So I think I can make it too. And that was pretty much the way Steve got people to realize that education and doing positive things is really the way to go, and fight hate.
And it is a way out, and there's a way out of their circumstance.
Yep.
And like you said, fighting hate, which I thought that the documentary is so powerful. Again, it's called Etched in Glass, the Steve Ross
Legacy
story.
of Steve Ross.
The Legacy of Steve
Yeah.
Ross. It's just a wonderful film. And you just finished it. It premiered at the Rhode Island International Film Festival.
It certainly did. It won Best Documentary, too.
Best documentary. And now you're going out and about throughout the United States and
We're going to other festivals for the next several months, probably into the summer, and trying to get a distributor to help us spread the word. 'Cause this is a film that really needs to be seen in this age of rising anti-Semitism, hate, divisiveness and so forth.
Racism.
Racism in general.
I
yeah.
thought of the NATO idea of an attack on one is an attack on all, and I think that when you attack one group, no matter what that group might be, it's an attack on all of us as Americans or human beings. And I think it's a powerful movie. I'd actually like to show the trailer to our audience and then come back and continue our conversation.
That'd be great.
When I was 9 years old, Germany invaded Poland. I was incarcerated in 10 slave labor death camps.
It was relentless. For 5 years.
One time I stole a potato. A guard saw me and he gave me 25 lashes with a lead pipe.
Several times I was going to be murdered, but I managed to get away.
I can't fathom like all the stuff we went through.
Me too.
After I was rescued from hell, I came upon a soldier that showed me compassion, and he gave me a flag.
America brought me here and they said I'm human.
I didn't have a penny.
I had no place to live, but I lived in the car when I attended Boston University.
But I made something of myself, and you can do the same thing.
Steve was a social worker in the projects, probably around the time I was just starting to get in trouble.
When I was about 14, I had stolen a car. That was the catalyst that brought Steve Ross into my life.
He made you feel important.
I was just amazed that he was even alive and decided to devote his life to helping kids like us.
And to see somebody actually here, it reaches me,
It is vital to have a memorial, to tell the world of all the atrocities.
In proposing this Holocaust memorial, Steve was the quarterback of the team.
The 6 towers was also the number 6 million. The 6-pointed star, the 6 death camps.
I just want to show you the little flag that was given to me by a soldier.
That's what he gave him. He gave him a flag.
I have searched for this angel for many years.
If this really is my grandfather, he's been searching for 67 years.
Don't give up your education. Stick with it.
Welcome back. We're having a discussion with Roger Lyons, the writer, director, and producer of the award-winning documentary Etched in Glass, The Legacy of Steve Ross. Welcome back. Let's talk about the documentary. Let's talk about how you decided to take that meeting, that first meeting with Steve, again, who was a social worker, helping kids on the streets of Boston to reclaim their life and inspire them. Right. And how did that experience of meeting him become this 1-hour documentary?
Well, it came at a time in history when Holocaust denial was starting to reach its peak. We had Ahmadinejad in Iran and lots of groups who were denying the Holocaust existed and so forth, and putting out fake stories about the Holocaust and so forth. And when I heard Steve one-to-one tell me his story, I thought, this has really got to get out. This is the kind of thing that has to be put together in some kind of film form and distributed widely to people all over the world, not just here. And as time went on, the hatred got worse, and I ended up just following Steve. This is what I ended up doing to start making the film. I didn't have money, didn't have a budget. I just said, I've got to follow this guy, and I have to capture his life, the words from Steve, who is a witness and a survivor, and make that known to everybody. And so that's what I basically did.
Very frankly, I was crying at the end of the film. It was very emotional. And it's about this boy who's from Poland, who, when the Nazis come into Poland, they begin to subject the Jews to wear the Star of David on the front and on the back, and dehumanize them. and it became a point where Jews were considered subhuman. And then his mother and father, or his mother, decides to put him into the home of a Christian family so that he will survive while they are taken away.
Right. He was the youngest, and they wanted to shelter him somehow, and so they put him in a Christian family of farmers, and so he was able to be sheltered for a while. But then, when the Nazis came around and started killing anybody harboring Jews, they put him in the woods, and where he met the partisans. And there's a long story about what happened to him there and how he got captured.
Right. And then he was, as a child, brought into the first of, like you said, 10 concentration camps, and he shares his stories of survival and horror. It's man's inhumanity to man. And then he is finally, after going through the horrors of this, he is liberated by the soldiers, American soldiers who come. He's in the Dachau concentration camp, and he meets with a soldier on a tank.
Right. Actually, they basically opened the gates, and so the prisoners were flooding out, and they really had no place to go. They said, go find a hospital or whatever. And a patrol of tanks, a line of tanks, go by, and one of the soldiers is sitting on top of the tank eating food, and he sees Steve, who looked disheveled and
he weighed
literally
50 pounds.
And lice and everything, tuberculosis and whatever. The soldier jumps off his tank, goes up to Steve, starts giving him some of his own food, gives him a hug, and then gives him a cloth to wipe his face. He's thinking it's a handkerchief. But he didn't realize until later it was an American flag, a little American flag, which he still carries today.
With 48 stars.
It's 48 stars. He's kept that flag. The flag is sort of a theme, a symbolic theme throughout the film of hope. It's a flag of freedom to Steve. And what he wanted to do when he got out of the camps, and he was in a DP camp at the end, he wanted to go to America and try to find this soldier to thank him for helping him in Dachau. And so for 67 years, he searched for this soldier. And I don't want to tell you what happened at the end of the movie because I'd ruin it for you.
Right, and that is part of the movie. That's a part of the thread of the story.
Correct.
I thought was really interesting is that Steve, having gone through that, I think he said I was basically in the valley of death.
Oh yeah.
Many a time, and had become numb because of the atrocities that had happened to him and others around him.
Right.
And lost any sense of human value. And then when that soldier was showing a moment of kindness, of warmth, of humanity, he realized that he could still love people.
Right. That act of kindness really spurred resilience in Steve. And it kind of gave him the strength and goal to help other kids, other people who were disadvantaged. And so what he did when he came to America is he worked his way through school. He had no education. He didn't speak English. He earned 3 college degrees, including a doctorate from Northeastern University and so forth, and was a street worker. He worked as a social worker. You know, he had a degree in social work and so forth, and he was on the streets of Boston helping inner city kids, along with Ray Flynn, to the future mayor of
Boston.
Ray Flynn, the future mayor of Boston, and they worked together to change kids' lives. And in the film, we see how some of them have turned out today. And say they never would have maybe survived without Steve.
They were incarcerated. They became attorneys, pillars of the community. I thought was very important is when Steve was talking to his mother when he was a little boy, and she said, "You're going to be important.
You're going to be a great man.
You're going to be a great man."
Right.
And a great man to him, he discovered, was a man who was educated, an educated man.
Right.
And I loved in your documentary the interaction with Steve, who is garbed in the concentration camp clothing, interacting with kids in the present day, inner city, and how important the past, the stories of the past, pertain to the present.
Right.
That was really beautifully
He
done.
was at 2 inner-city high schools in the Boston area. Boston High School, which is no longer there as Boston High School, and the Jeremiah Burke High School in Dorchester. And when he spoke with such passion in front of these kids and told them the specifics of what happened to him. You know, and they're sitting dumbfounded going, oh my God, if this happened to this guy and he made it, he survived, then my problems are nothing compared to this, and I can make it.
There was a sense of respect that they had for him, and they were emotionally moved by his powerful story. And your film is very powerful. It must be seen by a wide audience. Everybody needs to see it, and everybody needs to know what Steve was saying, that you must speak up. You must stand up if you see racism, if you see someone being disrespected, that it's important that you speak up on their behalf. Sometimes the smallest voice speaks up for those that are silent. And I just want to thank you very much for your wonderful film, Etched in Glass, The Legacy of Steve Ross, and I really hope that you will continue to get this film out there to the world. And congratulations, and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. And if you're interested in giving us a hand and visiting to see more information, look at steverossfilm.org on the website.
steverossfilm.org.
steverossfilm.org, yeah.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.